Right, gang. Got a bit of a production meeting before we crack on. Like, before we talk to all the children listening. Actually, that's the problem. We need to modernise to appeal to the youth. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but the Jimquisition brand isn't quite as hot as it used to be. And I think what we need is an influx of new blood to the fan base. So we need to appeal to the younger audiences. So I'm workshopping ideas. This is a bit of a brainstorming sesh. My first suggestion is we change this show's name to Coolquisition so that people know it is cool.
I mean, people wouldn't have known otherwise. That is a smart idea, perhaps.
Right? I'm drinking a cup of coffee because, hey, I can't start the day without my shot of Morning Joe. That is relatable. Like, people listening will say, haha, I too drink coffee and I like the caffeine for the effect it has. I got to pretend they have effects on me because of the ADHD. But yeah, totally, like, oh, God, it jitters me up.
See, I've been working on a similar but alternative way of growing the audience, which is that we start appealing to old people. We start getting old people listening to the show.
I don't know, can we get away with that much racism?
Oh, well, look, that's up to them what they do. We've not any control of them. But my rebrand idea to maybe get them on board is to try and trick them into thinking like it's like a countdown or one of those like daytime game shows, because we call it Podquisition.
Oh my God, they love quizzes.
Right, you just make it sound like it's a daytime TV show quiz, and like maybe they'll give it a look.
Okay, we could do that. I'm going to be Richard Whiteley. He's dead, but I don't think they'll notice. Hello, oh yeah! Can't do it.
Okay.
But I think I'm old enough now to sort of, like, fill their demographic of what they like to see on TV. Because, like, I'm old enough that if they dated me, they wouldn't look like creeps. But the tits are a lot younger. So they're quids in.
Comrade, you got any rebrand ideas for the show to bring new audiences in?
Hit us with it, Chillbean.
I mean, I accepted defeat a long time ago. When you said get some new blood into the audience, I thought we were courting the billionaire class.
Ooh.
I mean, because that's what they're doing. Getting that young blood, injecting it in themselves. Yeah.
True.
I think the gambit, if we want to get the billionaire crowd listening, is that we make this a show that you can only... Make it like those vanity phone apps that you have to pay like £1 million to have the app on your phone and it's just a status symbol. You can only download the show if you pay like £1 million per episode, and like having the new episode is the status symbol. We can maybe get some billionaires with that.
Like, we'll hit up the Star Citizen people for like advice on how to overcharge a nickel and dime and really exploit the fuck out of our fans.
The way I see it, we really only need one billionaire listening. Like, we should just pick one and focus hard on them.
We once had a millionaire listening. But then I said trans rights one too many times and Notch unfollowed me and pulled his support.
I was gonna say, there was a brief moment where Notch supported me on Patreon, and then that didn't last.
Oh, he once tweeted that he thanks God for me, and weirdly, he doesn't. He's not transphobic, remember that. Like, remember that. No transphobe ever is transphobic. But he did pull all that support, just as I was talking about trans rights.
I can summarize my interactions with Notch as he paid me $30 a month to complain that it was quite low. It was quite sad being a multi-millionaire and having all that money. It was quite rough. And then he stopped giving me 30 quid a month.
No one suffers like Notch in his house full of sweet dispensers.
His wall full of the wall that is just M&Ms.
Yeah.
It's a hard life.
I've got a glass pig. Never mind, sweets. I've got a tiny glass pig that's smaller than my thumb. I was reunited with it. Sorry, this is apropos of nothing, but I invited my friend John and Martha around Monday night. I hadn't seen them since New Year's Eve, where I was given a small glass pig by an Austrian person. where apparently at the holidays, it is customary to give small glass trinkets of incredibly twee things. There was like a small mushroom and a small ladybird, and I let everyone pick first, so the mushroom was long gone. But I've got a little white glass pig with little black spots on it like a cow, and it's got like legs like a balloon animal. It's brilliant, and this year I propose we all give glass trinkets to people, because it's the most mawkish thing in the world, but I love it, the little twee bastards. So yeah, that's my policy, and that's how I think we're going to appeal to the Austrian demographic, at least, with glass trinkets. So I think we should call this show Glass Trinket Circumcision.
Oh God. Glass trinket circumcision. That is that's a bad scene.
That is more of a Jonathan pitch, admittedly.
Like, what kind of an emergency are you in that you need to perform the circumcision right then in what you have to hand?
Is a small glass pig.
So, in summary, we would need quite a few millionaires or billionaires to buy into our expensive podcast thing for it to actually be a sustainable model.
Yeah.
It seems like it would probably be less sustainable than the, current model where we, don't have any billionaires involved.
There'd be a lot of churn. Because, the moment someone wealthy listens, they'll pull all support immediately. So, a lot of churn. So we've got to keep appealing. And there we go. I haven't had enough sympathy for nearly breaking my neck. I know I mentioned it on the Jimquisition and on the Boston's Favourite Son we recorded, and now I'm doing it now. But for a brief second, I was carrying an entire adult human on the back of my neck. How brave am I? Let's not use words like stupid, foolish, and reckless. Let's use words like brave, mighty, and brilliant. I'm alright. I hurt more because it's been raining than because I nearly broke my neck.
We were talking about this before the show. We both have barometric joints from various things going on with us.
Sure, yeah. And the thing is, like, once you hit, 30, if you have any injury from your youth, then that's when it kicks off.
Yeah. Mine was 16 being hit by a car. And it gave me my barometric knee. And that one's done the barometric thing since I was 16. My other joints are finally catching up. It's like, you did get hit by a car. More than just that knee got hit.
Knee drop on a DDR machine in 2000.
I didn't even do anything. I was just born with shit knees. Like, they just collapsed in my teens. And then, of course, there's my back. And then wrestling for a year with a dislocated shoulder didn't help.
But we've had similar weather here where it's just been hot and then cold and then hot and then cold, and I can't deal. I cannot deal.
Living in Yorkshire especially, like, the weather here is just, it always wants to be cold and raining. But because it's British summertime, that stuff is forceful. Like, British summertime is an imposition. So it will, force its way in, and then the rain will fight it back, and while they're having fucking duel of the fates out there, I'm rubbing my knees going, I don't want to get up off this chair.
Oh, welcome to Podquisition.
Welcome.
We're here. It's a show. We talk about video games sometimes.
Monologues and demagogues all day long.
Who's played stuff this week? Anyone have played any things?
I tell you what I didn't play much of. After desperately, trying to get done with the podcast last week, I've only played about 10 minutes of Hades 2.
Jesus.
Yeah? Did you enjoy that 10 minutes?
It was alright, yeah. I think it's hard to adjust starting again.
Yes.
Which is why I didn't immediately, get hooked again. Because I'm so used I played Hades 1 for so long. I'm used to it being the back-end experience, which is quite different from the front end. So having to reset that has been a bit tricky. Plus, I've had some other stuff to be getting on with.
That's what Linda and I have been running into a lot of. She keeps commenting on how much longer it seems to take to get through a run. How much time it takes to accomplish the task, regardless of how far in you're going.
Oh, yeah. I found it unacceptable that I lost to the first boss the first time I saw it. I was like, no, it's the first boss. I walk through these forgetting what early Hades was like.
Well, and the bosses feel like they drag because you are, you don't realize how much benefit you're gaining from the gradual progression of getting just baseline better shit. And so you can utterly stomp something in 25 seconds that you've forgotten used to take you like 3 minutes.
So yeah, unfortunately I can't speak much on it.
That's fair.
You know, I can tell. Very good, I can tell. I mean, it's more Hades. The character designs, because of my memory, I would need to have a proper side-by-side comparison. Unfortunately, the most readily available side-by-side comparisons right now are the Hades 2 artwork and something some terminal wanker has edited to quote-unquote fix it. But looking at them in isolation, the character designs are really cool.
Yeah.
I haven't seen what the new Dionysus looks like yet, so that's gonna hinge on it.
I don't think Dionysus is in here yet.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm like 45, 50 hours in, I've not seen Dionysus.
Okay, well there's an actual character fix. Put him back in there so that I can start wanking over Hades again.
I have a suspicion he will be in, and I have a suspicion when he'll be added, but I have a suspicion what they're holding him for.
It is curious, the specific gods that are absent from here, particularly as it pertains to the narrative that they're telling. Like, where's Ares? Where's Athena? Now, Athena, I'm expecting, will crop up later simply because of some of the other characters that are present. But Ares seems like a huge gap. And I don't necessarily miss him, because Doom effects were so-so, and they seem to have been replaced by blitz effects working more or less the same way, but with a damage component. So, I don't miss Ares from a gameplay perspective, but it is a curious narrative gap, I think, to not have him running around. Or even a reference to him.
I think Athena's very understandable why she's not there, in that mechanically a lot of people did a lot of reliance on Athena's defensive stuff, and that definitely does change up how you have to play. If there's one character whose boons you're going to remove to really change up a playstyle, hers is probably a really good candidate. But also I think narratively, they have set up the hooks really well for her not being present, but she could show up later, and that would create some interesting tension.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely okay with that one.
Yeah. I'd also like to amend what I said about the character art. I would like to fuck Chaos, if that's okay.
Yes! Chaos's new art is fucking... The first time I saw it, I had to stop for a minute and process what I was looking at, and that is perfect for Chaos.
I don't want to intrude, but I need to emphasize for the listeners exactly how fuckable Chaos is. In all the years I've known Conrad, and it's been knocking on 15, he has never said out loud that he wants to fuck someone. I've never heard you just say, I want to fuck that. That is how fuckable Chaos is.
I know that there would be consequences for it, and I accept that.
Oh, yeah. I'll put it this way, for anybody who's not seen Chaos's art, Chaos is hot and fuckable and attractive enough that I would look past the fact that Chaos is holding a skull with an attached spinal cord with a fetus on an umbilical cord coming out of the mouth.
Well, yeah, because I'm looking into Chaos's other head and eyes while that one is on my... Anyway.
I'm real deep in the weeds on Hades 2. It is still the big thing I'm sinking time into when I have time. I have made it to as far as the game will currently go in any directions presented. I've seen currently the limits of what combat and location content there is in the game. There is still a lot of stuff for me to be doing. I've gotten a good 45, 50 hours already out of early access, and I've barely started scratching the bit of the game that would be turn the difficulty up and keep fucking around. I'm really digging it.
I still don't like the weapons.
Yeah?
Yeah.
None of them have grabbed you.
No, I mean, there are ones that I can see practical benefit to. Like, I'm warming to the flames.
Those are the ones I've been really gravitating to.
And I've warmed to the flames because Hera becomes a thing, and Hitch with the flames can be so effective. But otherwise, yeah, I finally unlocked the aspects, and I like the way that those work. One thing I will give this game credit for is, while there is an obscene number of collectible resources, I mean, just so many of them, they at least have made a concerted effort to make them all valuable and continue to have value as you continue to play and get deeper into it.
And I appreciate as well that a lot of them feed into other resources, where if you end up with an abundance of one, there might be an incantation to turn it into a rarer one in its place. There is a degree of flexibility around them.
Yeah, and some of that was present in a much more minimalist fashion, through the shop in Hades 1. And I was worried about the complexity of that when I saw just how many more things there are. But it's not too bad. I am finding myself doing a lot of, all right, well, I'd rather go this path, but I want that resource, so I'm going to go get that resource than I would have thought necessary. But it's fine.
I have one thing of note, and I'm not going to go into specifics on this, because to discuss it in specifics would require some spoiler discussion. I will say, look out on Friday of this week. I will have a video up on youtube.com/LauraKBuzz talking about the thing I want to talk about here in some, proper spoiler depth. I have hit a point of frustration with one mechanic in this game. It is a mechanic that, without getting into specifics, disables some accessibility accommodations and access to some accessibility settings as a gotcha that I don't think is a good move on the game's part.
Yeah, I now know what you're talking about. And
yeah,
not being able to access those things is unnecessary.
Yeah, I understand narratively what they're going for. I understand the impact they want to have, and I think for some people it will have the intended impact.
Sure.
I don't think it's malicious, but I think that they had, this would be a neat narrative idea, and didn't think about the impact it would have on the players that are actively using the accessibility accommodations the game otherwise provides. I also think that the way that you get the game to back off of that whole mechanic is not a good design decision, because it forces you to play the game without the accessibility accommodations available to you in order, multiple times in order to get your accessibility accommodation back. And I think that, had they made it so that you could get that situation resolved some other way without having to go through the situation that you don't have accessibility accommodations in, I'd have been more forgiving of it. It's a frustrating design decision. I won't go any more specific into it here, but if you want to know more and go spoilery, keep an eye out on YouTube on Friday, because it's the only thing about this game that has really rubbed me a little the wrong way.
And I think that there's even a simple solution to that would retain the effect for players of that sort of realization, and then back it off. All they'd really need to do is add an option in the gameplay menu after it happens the first time.
Yes.
And that would solve the whole thing.
In the video I've got going up this week, I make 4 different suggestions of ways you could work around it. That is one of them. There's a few other ways I think you could do it. I think there's really easy fixes that don't involve having to remove this little gotcha.
Yeah. Because it is good. It is good. It's clever. And I appreciated it.
It's clever, but it is not considerate of disabled players, which is something you have to be if you're going to have an accessibility dedicated menu in your game. You are saying to disabled players, we are thinking about your needs. You kind of have to keep those in mind, even in moments like this. But generally speaking, I'm really digging Hades 2 still. There is already more variety of content to see in this than there was in the finished first Hades. I'm more than happy to support a game in early access in that kind of situation. I'm like, yeah, you've certainly earned getting my money's worth out of me already.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's very good.
I played a couple of other things. I might jump in with one. I started playing a really adorable little game that I don't have a huge amount to say about, but that's not because it's not good. I started playing Little Kitty, Big City.
I've been keen on this coming out. In fact, Linda reminded me of its release the other day, and I've heard it's a little buggy, but pretty good.
I've heard as much, but I've not experienced it myself, and I don't know whether it's because I'm playing on console or what. I've been playing it on Switch and haven't really experienced much buggy with it. But yeah, the gist of this is you are a little black cat that's fallen out of an apartment window, and in theory, the game is you trying to get back to your multiple floors up apartment that your human lives in. To say that that's the aim of the game completely doesn't do it justice, because the point of the game is, sure, we're meandering our way to get back there, but also we're a cat and there's going to be a lot of taking the scenic route involved in that journey. The game has really good expressive animation, uses a lot of exaggerated squash and stretch to really fun effect. Having put maybe an hour and a half or so into it so far, it feels comparable to something like Untitled Goose Game, but with a little bit different of a vibe, because where Untitled Goose Game was vengeful chaos, vengeful mischief, this is mischief under a layer of, I'll look at you with big soppy eyes and go, oh, you can't blame me, I'm adorable. It's not my fault that I'm wrecking shit. And that little change in tone, I think, works in its favour. It does a lot to help set it apart. Generally speaking, it's just a nice little crafted, sandboxy environment. Go find a bunch of stuff to do. Objectives will sort of naturally pop up as you explore the world and will interconnect with each other a little bit. I had a quest where someone wanted to be paid in feathers, so I had to go and learn that I could trip over a human carrying a sandwich and steal their bread and put it down on the floor and then crouch and then pounce on a bird, and I let the bird go, but I just got a little feather. It's half that, and it's half going around shops knocking glass jars off the top of countertops while people shout at you, and you're like, can't get me, I'm up on the top of the shelves, knocking stuff around. It's very cute. I streamed maybe an hour of it, and then decided, I don't want to stream more of this, I want this to be my, chill, not particularly for work kind of game. And I've been chipping away at it and having a lovely time. It's a very wholesome little game. Either of you played anything else this week?
I played a fair bit this week. I guess the one that would be most relevant to listeners to start off with would be Crow Country.
Again, another thing that I wanted to play this week, and the only thing I've had time for is Hades.
It's on my list, just didn't have time.
Yeah, this one is on a lot of lists. It's on Friend of the Show Casey Explosion's Game of the Year list. She's that taken with it. I'm not quite as taken with it as Casey, but it is very good. It is a high-quality game. One that deserves praise for being one of the very, very, very few indie retro survival horrors that didn't ask the question, what if we just made a shit game on purpose? This one doesn't, put in awkward controls because of that fucking ruinous misconception that shit controls made old horror games scary. This one has real controls, which is great. Played in this isometric perspective, which is really nicely done in that you get a good view of the space, but just enough is obscured that if you start sprinting headlong, you could bump into something. I was a bit unsure of the visual style at first because the main characters, the human NPCs, all of them, look a bit too cheap with their very clearly segmented limbs and that. They look a little bit like they were made in dreams or something like that, like using basic models. But the monster designs and the environment designs are lovely. So that really offset it. The monsters in particular, they've nailed that Jacob's Ladder thing. It's my favourite type of horror design where the monsters are inherently goofy and silly looking, and that somehow makes them scarier. Because something that silly being that dangerous and that just sort of slightly disturbing really speaks to me. So I love the enemies. They're all really horrible, mutilated body horror type things. a really good job's been done with the limited graphics and sound to just communicate that whatever these things are or were, they do not want to be what they are now. Really freaky stuff. I really like that. It's quite witty as well. The writing's nice. It's got a cool little story that unfolds, like with the backstory and everything. Decent puzzles. You know, it is very much a survival horror game at its core, doing all of the things you'd expect. Lots of solve the soup cans type of puzzles. They use the conceit of the theme park well with that regard, in that you interact with some animatronics or some rides. Nothing like major, but, you know, a battery you might need is in a mechanical mermaid or something. And there are some funny little silly moments, like there are these little mushrooms that are hidden around, and they're like, "Hello, I'm a little mushroom boy. I will grant any wish you want. Oh, you want to upgrade the range of your flamethrower? Weird wish." And so there your weapon upgrades are these little mushroom boys. There's a lot of adorable stuff in it, but also just, creepy body horror shit. I like it a lot. They do a really cool thing with the backtracking, where obviously there's a lot of that as you get new keys to open new things, but they've got this cool little... It's a very subtle thing, but I really like it, where you can avoid combat, and it's advisable a lot of the time, as with many survival horrors, but it's a risk-reward thing, because as you progress in the game, new monsters populate older areas. So the game warns you, like, if you don't thin the herd now, you've got worse problems later. It's like population control almost. You're fighting enemies not to kill them all, but just to make areas manageable later if you think you're going to need to go through this area a lot. The only drawback for that is they do the same with traps, and fuck the traps. There's something just especially unexpected about going into a room you've cleared and walked through like several times, and suddenly there's a chandelier on the ceiling that drops on your head, and you're not really looking up there because you're looking down where all the other traps and enemies are. And the amount of times I've been gotten with it just feels snide. And they deal so much damage that I've actually save-scummed at points just to be like, that, it doesn't feel fair. And sometimes it just feels arrogant and I'm not letting it win. So I've actually, like, done myself out of progress just because I'll get hit with a fucking chandelier I didn't see coming. I'm not having that. I'll do the puzzle again to not be hit by that chandelier. Same goes for, like, the poison traps. You get poisoned so much in this game. You're constantly going in your menu to get antidotes. Multiple different types of gas traps. I do like the traps that appear in the back end that are item pickups that are rigged to explode. That's a cute idea. They're the same shape as other pickups, but the labeling is different, and you eventually learn sort of at a glance which are dangerous. But those first few moments are really tense, like until you work out what to look for. So yeah, it's really cool. I'm very fond of it. It's probably the best retro indie survival horror, like those ones inspired by classic Resident Evil and Silent Hill. It's probably the best example of those that I've seen. Very recommended. Very recommended. It's cool.
Nice. Glad to hear it's decent.
Yeah, there's just a lot going for it. Well written, well paced, good horror.
You played anything else this week, Conrad, or has it just been the Hades 2?
It's just been the Hades.
I've played a couple of other things I can quickly chime in on. I started playing an interesting game that I'm definitely going to stick more with, called Tales of Kenzera Zao, which is a Metroidvania that is published by EA Originals, which is, to my understanding, their indie publishing label for we would like to have some games that we're attached to that, like, might win some Game of the Year awards for, like, Games for Impact, because they, tackle untold stories. It's the we would like some kudos awards, we'll pay to publish some indie stuff. And this one is a side-scrolling Metroidvania, where the gimmick is you have access to a couple of different masks that you can tap mid-combo to change your fighting style midway through fighting. And it works really well as a gimmick. The starting setup for each form of your character is just a light attack, heavy attack, a dash and a jump, and you add additional, maybe like, so far I've seen like one additional thing per mask form to sort of augment that. And the way that they play will be different between them. There's a few things I really like about this game's presentation in particular so far. I really like the environment designs. Whoever's been doing the environment designs for this game has a really fantastic eye for making sure that, like, big shots of an environment have one feature element that will really help that area stick in your mind. The opening shot of the game, for example, is a sort of futuristic cityscape, but the one thing that sticks in my head is this one building that's a giant pyramid with an inverted pyramid on top of it. It's almost like an hourglass of pyramid in the middle of this big futuristic city. And there's a lot of use of things like this where that's just one very simple silhouette that makes that area not just feel cookie cutter in its design. There's also a lot of really nice design choices, like when wearing one of the combat masks, the sun mask, your male character you're playing as has this movement to them that is very, like, ballet-inspired. Like, this combat movement system that almost is like pirouettes and sort of, like, would not look out of place in something like Swan Lake. The kind of movements you very rarely see given to male lead characters, and, like, that really struck me quite well. The game is doing some interesting stuff narratively with being a story about coming to terms with grief. On the surface, it is... I thought it was going to be, like, a lot more predictable than the premise actually seems to be, because, like, the initial setup is that tried and true. Someone you love has passed away, you're going to go on a quest to convince death to give you your dead loved one back. And, like, usually that entirely plays out as somewhere along the journey you come to terms with the fact that, like, the correct thing to do is to walk away and accept the death of the person who's passed on. This adds a little wrinkle to that up front, where the deal made with death is, cool, we'll go on this journey together, but if you don't see it through to completion, you will be mine. You will be taken by death. So there is, like, an acknowledgement of, usually the trope is you come to terms with it and you just walk away from the quest. That is from the start not presented as an option, and I'm very curious where they're going with that. I have one main problem with the game, and it's not a deal breaker of a problem, but it's a problem that annoys me specifically. I'm someone that's very completionist about, like, if you show me an optional challenge, I want to go do that optional challenge before I move on. I struggle to walk away from optional challenges. And the problem this game has is with how those optional challenges are balanced relative to how far into the game you are. The very first optional challenge you're presented involves a fast-moving river that changes your movement speed, dramatically increases it, and a corridor where you have to slide under things and jump over things with, like, pinpoint precision, or hit one-hit kill spike walls with zero checkpointing. It's the kind of optional challenge where if in any other, like, Metroidvania-type game, you offered me this, like, 80% of the way into the game, I'd go, cool, this feels like an appropriate level of challenge for an optional challenge toward the end of the game. It's the very first optional challenge presented. And I know I could just walk away. I personally struggle to do that, and therefore I'm finding myself frustrated going, this feels way too precise of a challenge for I've barely gotten my bearings with the game. And generally, the optional challenges feel like they have that kind of... They're not built in a way that feels respectful of how much experience you have with the game. I'm okay with it being real challenging. It feels like just a little off of the curve. But so far I've been enjoying it. I'm curious to stick with it and see where it's going. I like a lot of the voice acting and presentation. It's definitely interesting. It's caught my attention. What about you, Steph? What else have you been playing this week?
So I started a game that came out yesterday, called Athenian Rhapsody. I saw a trailer for it, immediately fell in love with the look and the sound of it. It looked like a very unsubtle copy of Undertale.
Okay.
And having played it, I can in fact say that it is. It is so shamelessly aping Undertale. It's very shameless. The general conceit is the trailer, at least, and the marketing promises that no one playthrough is ever the same. That everything plays a little different. Now, we hear claims like this all the time. I'm not exactly sure how it manifests. I do know I started the game very briefly, then restarted it when I realised I'd spelt my name in all caps. And it did pair me off with a completely different character at the beginning, based on a questionnaire that I was asked before the main game started, with silly questions and answers. It's got that dorky humour that you see in games like this. So at least that's different. Instead of getting a little red devil, I've been dealing with a little pink coral-looking guy called Richard. It's good. It's just shameless.
I'm okay with shameless.
Here's the thing. I've heard it before, the joke it's telling, but it tells it well. And that's what's keeping me going, is as obvious as it is what this game's being, it's doing it quite well. This is not a cack-handed, half-baked attempt to cash in on Undertale. It's a very well-done attempt to cash in on Undertale. The writing is quite funny. It actually made me laugh out loud. Just spoke to an NPC who was fishing and saying he had to catch the fish because if you don't, they come and make fun of you. But if you catch it, it is he who makes the fun. I just was very charmed by the idea that that's the objective of fishing, is mockery. It's full of little NPCs with silly little things. The battle system, yes, has a befriend mechanic that is exactly Undertale's. You can attack, or you can select various commands to interact with the enemies. One thing that seems to be different is you only have to make friends with an enemy type once, and there isn't a pacifist genocide thing going on, I don't think. It does track your friends versus your victims, but it seems that, and it has to be this way, because if you had to make friends every single time, it'd be such a way more boring game because of how long it can take to befriend things. So you fight an enemy the first time, you do the Undertale thing of interacting with it, avoiding its attacks, which again, exact same thing. You're playing a little version of yourself on a board with enemy attacks represented as various shapes or things flying at you. Once you've befriended one, that seems to be it. You can then kill subsequent versions of them and level up and everything, which I like, because there is a whole battle system, very much like Undertale had, that one doesn't feel like they can use if they want to play it properly. Whereas here it's a bit different. It seems the benefit of befriending enemies first is you collect them on each biome, and then you report it to a character who will give you a badge for befriending every enemy type in the area.
Okay.
And then it seems you're free to just sort of, play it as normal. That's at least my read so far. Other than that, it looks lovely. Like, the visuals are fantastic. The character designs are a lot of fun. It's really bright and colourful, lovely animations. The music is outstanding. That's one of the things that got me excited to play it. The soundtrack is got one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a long, long fucking time. It's been a while since I've heard a soundtrack just this consistently catchy. Even in the early goings, every area I've been to, every single bit of music is great. So, if nothing else, the soundtrack I'm really into. For your interests, Laura, you can change the menu sound effects to be various duck quacks.
Hell yeah.
Yep, I thought of you as soon as I saw that. There are silly things to play around with in the menus. There's a help section, one of the helps being that you feel sad when you're alone at night, and it just gives you some life advice. It's very cute, very adorable, very dorky, and very, very unashamed of what it's doing. And I so far like it. So far I really like it. I thought I'd cringe at how much it's copying Undertale, but the fact that they're still managing to be funny is letting them get away with it. Because for all its copying, like I said, I've heard it before, but it's the way you tell them, and they're telling it well. So we will see. It also called me out harder than any game's ever called me out before, because it lets you name your character. I named my character Steph, and then when someone asked my name, they said Steph. I was expecting a cooler name like James. And I felt very, very called out. But yes, that was pure random chance. Someone did ask that. Do the devs follow you and are they trying to fuck with you? No, pure coincidence.
Pure coincidence can do things like that.
Yeah.
When playing the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, I did think of you when I got to the room where it's the button that says your name, but no matter what your name is, you press the button and it says Jim.
Oh, yeah.
And there's moments in games like that where I'm like, sometimes you're just going to put a name in a game and it's going to seem way more targeted to, like, one person than it otherwise would.
Although, funnily enough, the Stanley Parable does have a reference to me, and famously the developers reached out to use my new name.
Exactly. They were super good. They updated the screenshot of a Destructoid review and changed the text on it,
lovely.
Which is... Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not currently beaming about Athenian Rhapsody being like, oh my god, you've got to play this, it's so amazing. But it's got me on the hook, and fingers crossed I will have that opinion. Right now I have the opinion of this is very promising, not original in terms of any of the conceits going on, but the humor is on point, the visuals are fantastic, and the soundtrack is fucking incredible.
I gave it a Google. I'm definitely intrigued, shameless as it clearly seems to be. I'm fascinated by one mechanic I've seen mentioned, which leads into the question of exactly how variable these playthroughs will be. Apparently your specific playthrough will create like a trading card save file at the end that you can trade with other people, and it will some kind of playable experience that's based on whatever your friend played. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I admire the ambition.
So I've not beaten a playthrough yet, so I can't speak fully on it. I've not even seen the trading card, but there is reference to it. It's called Your Rhapsody, and it tells you various things that will be added to it. Like, there is an accessibility option. There's just one, but it gives you invincibility frames when you get hit in battle, so that you don't just, like, take a chain of damage. And they do mention that if you use it, it will just, like, be shown on your Rhapsody that you've used it. Like, that's it. There's no other punishment.
I've said this before. I'm not keen on making permanent markers that you've used in accessibility.
No, me neither. It is just the first example I can think of.
I get it. Yeah.
But no, I'm not keen on it either. Another thing is there are cameras set up around the world, and you can use them to take a picture that I guess will be on the trading card. So you can only have one, but there are various locations, and as you make friends or party members and they follow you, you can take the picture with them. So currently it's just a little picture of me and a little sausage dog that I found and did battle with, and it became a friend, and so it can follow me around as a party member, and you can swap to them during battle, and they've got their own commands and stuff. And that's really cute. It seems you can only have one at a time, but you can switch them. Once you get to the first city area, you can switch them out, like any of the ones you've collected. And looking at the amount of question marks on the list, there's a lot of them to collect. Yeah. And, presumably take your favourite one to your favourite location where there's a camera, take a photo, and then that's the front of your card, which is really cute.
Yeah.
How extensive all of that is, I do not yet know. So how extensive, how dramatic the story changes, who knows yet? But we will see. Hopefully it's extensive, because it's the original thing this game's like doing.
I'm intrigued enough that I have it downloading right now to get around to when I have time to check it out.
I would be curious to see what you think, because it is... I mean, I'm curious to see what I think, because I don't quite know yet. I know I'm enjoying it. Like, I'm having a lot of fun. So, whether it's original or not, that's one of the beautiful things about games, is the difference between plagiarism and an homage is how good the game is.
The only other thing I've really played this week is I've been playing around with the new Vampire Survivors DLC, Operation Guns.
Yes.
Which is the Contra DLC.
Weirdly, they didn't let me near that one.
No, the Konami one didn't get you anywhere near that one.
No.
Honestly, the thing I keep thinking about since having played through this is I weirdly think, like, the two DLCs that have been brand tie-ins with other properties have been two of the best DLCs for Vampire Survivors. And that's not to be a negative comment on the Foscari or Moonspell DLCs. But I have been really impressed at the quality, the amount that the tie-ins with Among Us and Contra haven't felt like cash grabs. I really like the new map in this Contra one. It is a pretty big sprawling environment that goes between like grassy outskirts into still somewhat stable but a little bit sort of bombed cityscape into desert, barren environment. It feels like there's a lot more variety of enemy types showing up. Really cool soundtrack stuff in there. I feel like this is the most characters and weapons they've added at one time in a DLC for this. The fact that they're basically all guns hasn't stopped them feeling varied, and I think that is impressive. Given that I'm not usually a person for playing characters in Vampire Survivors that require me to direct my weapon direction, particularly once evolved, a lot of these weapons reach a point where I'm very into them. It's a neat DLC.
That's good to know. I've not got round to it. Like, I've actually been working on a bunch of Vampire Survivors stuff, which I'm super fucking proud of.
I'm so excited for the shit you've been working on to be in that game. I mean, it's going to be great.
Hopefully. I'm very proud of it, and then, like, Poncel's happy with it. Yeah, I would have loved to have been commissioned to have done a little bit of bestiary or stage descriptions for the Contra stuff. I'm already delighted that a project I work on has had Konami's involvement. That already amuses me greatly.
There's probably an ability to, if you have the DLC, look at the credits and see your name and also Konami in the same credit list.
I mean, possibly. I might ask if I can have some of the assets, like just so I can feel like I've done something. I better not, but yeah, like between that and the Among Us DLC, the crossovers are really interesting, and the game is so thematically loose that it doesn't matter. That's what I love about the game. It doesn't matter what it's doing. And that, it's what gave me a lot of creative freedom for the writing projects I've done, because Luca is a fascinating game director who really is, like, not big on established canon, not big on making everything make sense. So really is, like, have fun with this world, have fun with the characters and what you can do with it, and it's very refreshing.
I think that loose and floatiness has done a good job of making it so that weird little ideas that feel very unique can be part, like, to make sure that tie-ins with other properties don't feel like they have to be wedged into the mold of just Vampire Survivors. Like, I think a lot about the Among Us one, having the alarms gone off, you have to go hit the thing to stop the emergency mechanic. It's a little thing, but it goes a long way to carrying that feeling of tone.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I've been learning lately, again, not to give away too much, is just how much you can do with one or two mechanics to completely change how something is played or approached. And that, again, is something Vampire Survivors has been really good at, is taking this incredibly simple idea and then iterating on it to maximize the mechanics to do different things, which a lot of the games copying it have not even considered.
What happens if you add just one mechanic and then play around with what that does and layer it, and there you go.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite things, which a lot of people confuse with backtracking, which is why some people have been trying to make me sound like a hypocrite because of the Dragon's Dogma thing. But I'm a big fan of maximising the potential of something, be it an environment or a mechanic or something like that. Let's take this thing and not just retread it. How do we remix it? How do we make the same interaction do something different? Seeing the applications of those mechanics based on the different properties crossing over with it and some of the stuff going on in the adventure mode, it's just really cool to see. And obviously I'm somewhat biased, but I do think it's a big key to the game's longevity, especially where so many other games copy just the basics, but do not have the imagination to pull off making it compelling and worth going back to. The amount of thought that Poncel is putting into this game, forethought, and the variety, it's one of the reasons why it's enduring.
Yeah.
That game is constantly updating, a lot of it for free, and it's an incredible game, not just because of the general gameplay conceit that sort of launched a genre. Yeah. It's doing a lot more that I think it could stand to get a little bit more credit for.
Well put. Have you played anything else this week, Steph, before we move to the news?
I played two things. I'm playing Final Fantasy VI, and I've never properly gone through that one. That's been an albatross around my neck for a long time, so I'm deeper into that than I've ever been. It's fun. Final Fantasy VI, you know, those who aren't too fond of the more latter day, sort of after Final Fantasy VII took off and the series went mainstream, a lot of the older school fans will name 6 as the best one or their favourite one. I wouldn't go that far, but, you know, Kefka is a great villain and the gameplay is cool, and you see a lot of sort of the turning point in 6 from the older school Final Fantasy to the more modern stuff. So that's cool. Not a great deal to say about it because it's, you know, Final Fantasy VI. The other one I've played is Slayer's... Let's see if I can remember the name of this. Slayer X Terminal Aftermath Revenge of the Slayer. I think that's the full title. There's 2 colons in there. This is the sequel to Hypnospace Outlaw that I somehow didn't know about.
Oh.
Yeah. Apparently it came out on like PC and Xbox last year and then came to Switch, PS5 yesterday. I was given an advance copy to check out, and... So it's the sequel to Hypnospace Outlaw, but it's a first-person shooter. An incredibly puerile, pathetic, edgy first-person shooter developed by Zane, the guy whose website you moderate in Hypnospace Outlaw. The edgy kid with the really shittily drawn comics. He made a game in like 1998 or something, and there have been many, many retro shooters that, like the whole boomer shooter thing. Many ones that have been like, oh, we're reminiscent of Doom or, you know, Quake or something. I've not seen one as authentic as this one. This one really nails it. The visual quality they've put on the opening FMV to make it look like an artifact-laden PC cutscene, complete with beautifully flat acting. There's a woman character, and whoever they got to do her voice, they managed to like nail the kind of bored, flat tone that those types of characters had back in the day, like 1-to-1. Perfection.
This looks like it could have been a Duke Nukem 3D clone.
I was about to say, yes. The game is very derivative on purpose. In universe, it was made by someone who'd watched The Matrix and learned the wrong lessons from it. Riddled with spelling mistakes, constant references to nards and sleeping with people's moms, human feces as enemies. Like, completely immature, but just done in a way that works. And yeah, it's very clear that Duke Nukem 3D is a big sort of thing being parodied. There's a dedicated button to flip off, like just throw the bird. And what really sells it is Zane, who's like providing the voice for the main character, because obviously the main character is Zane and he is cool and awesome. But you can just hear him like just very genuinely sniggering as he flips the bird, just giggling to himself at how clever he is. Loads of great sight gags all over it. The gameplay is rock solid. Nothing too spectacular. Very much like Bolt Gun and some of the other retro FPSs, it does suffer from the thing that the back end is not as fun as the front end, because the novelty wears off, and they introduce a green werewolf enemy with a rocket launcher that can take you down in 2 hits, and there's loads of them, and they're bullet sponges, and you just get to some of the later levels where you're like, yeah, this is like a really cheap way of escalating the challenge. But that front end is great, and the back end isn't bad. Overall, really fun, very funny, and the fact that it is such a pathetic, derivative shooter makes it the perfect sequel somehow to Hypnospace Outlaw, which itself is one of the most unique things out there. And I'm very excited at the prospect of this being a thing. Taking not just the early internet that Hypnospace parodied. They've now parodied sort of shitty first-person shooters made by edgy boys in the 90s. And there's all sorts of other things they could do now, like educational games or adventure games, just anything that was big on PC back then. I would love to see a Hypnospace in-universe version of. So yeah, we'll see what they do next, if they do anything next.
I also appreciate that they made a Steam developer profile for Big Z Studios. Like, Big Z Studios is the developer of Slayer's X, and that
Damn
is
right.
That's great. Good for them.
Yeah. I think that speaks volumes as to why it's so successful, why it's good at what it does. It's like I always say, commit to the bit.
Mm-hmm.
It commits 100%, and it does it in a way that feels more genuine. Just because it's the little things. It's not just, here's a shotgun and some pixel graphics. It's, we've nailed the tone of what a kid would make in the 90s. We've nailed the way FMVs are animated, not just like the filters they've put over them, the way they're animated, the way they're acted, the way they're dressed even. It's just dripping in either well-researched or very fondly remembered 90s stuff. I like it a lot. It's obviously not as inventive as Hypnospace is conceptually, but the very fact they did it, and it's worth playing not just for the joke, which it could have been. Like some of these games where the concept is really silly and inventive, but the joke lasts as long as the trailer for it and you don't need to play it. This one, I wouldn't say you need to play it, but you'll have a really good time if you do, more than likely. As far as these modern-day boomer shooters go, I reckon it's up there. It's definitely up there. Not top tier, but definitely under that. Like, just under it.
Nice. We got a couple of little bits of news before we finish up today.
Uh-huh.
And they're both Xbox not handling messaging very well around having, shuttered those studios recently.
Xbox not handling messaging well? I'm stunned.
Shock and surprise. So, first one we've got is Xbox President Sarah Bond was interviewed at the Bloomberg Tech Summit and gave some answers about why those studios that got closed were closed, and they are incredibly non-answers. I've heard some non-answers out of corporations before, but let me pick some nice little quotes for you. When asked specifically about the closure of Tango Gameworks, she said, one of the things I really love about the games industry is that it's a creative art form, and it means that the situation and what success is for each game and for each studio is also really unique. There's no one-size-fits-all to it for us, and so we look at each studio and each game team, and we look at a whole variety of factors when we're faced with sort of making decisions and trade-offs like that. But it all comes back to our long-term commitment to the games we create, the devices we build, the services, and ensuring we're setting ourselves up to be able to deliver on those promises. It's fucking nothing. Why did you shut down Tango Gameworks? Success looks different for every game and studio.
I mean, that is the game industry in a nutshell, though. The fact that success doesn't look like success to them. Let's face it, that's what they really said. Success looks different. That is an incredibly, like you say, it's a nothing statement. That is a complete nothing burger. But it is also weirdly telling. Not in an intended way, but it speaks volumes that they look at something successful that we're all looking at as successful, and they're telling us it's not because success looks different. This is alternative facts all over again.
Well, maybe what they're telling us is that sometimes success looks like getting your studio shut down.
You know what makes that particular quote all the more fucking ironic? There is a screenshot that accompanies the live stream of when that quote was being read. And above her head is a graph of Xbox's year-over-year growth, showing all of the big growth and income and increased profit for Xbox. Like, she's literally sitting under a Xbox is making more money graph, going, sometimes you make a critically acclaimed game and that's not enough.
Let's reword what they said to be more honest. Success looks the same. It's their reaction to success that's different. Because in this fucked up industry, and indeed in industry, success does not determine if you live or die as a studio. In fact, success can lead to you being shut down. Because the more successful, the more money you generate for your publisher, the more, as we've always had to say, the more desperate they get to cut costs to keep the profit going next financial quarter, and that's when we have layoffs and shutdowns. The more money you make for a company, the more you increase your fucking risk of getting shut down. But of course, if you don't make money, you'll get shut down. You are truly damned the moment you sell. That's the lot of an indie studio. Doesn't mean you shouldn't sell. Like, there are many reasons you'd want to sell, possibly to just fucking get out of the industry. And obviously, depending on how many employees you have relying on you, that could either be a wise business move or a really shitty thing to do. But you've just got to be aware that the moment you sign on the dotted line and hand your studio over to a company like Microsoft, you are damned.
Yeah. Well, you see, we shouldn't be too mean about Cerebon's comments here, because we got one other story this week, and it's about being mean to Xbox executives. So former Blizzard boss Mike Ybarra decided this would be a great time to try and step in and defend Xbox, and specifically to defend the hurt feelings of poor Phil Spencer. Oh, poor Phil Spencer. In a tweet thread, and I will just start reading from it. I see a lot of shots at Phil over today's Xbox announcements on social media. I get it, but knowing him as a human, I know this hurts him as much as anyone else.
Fuck off! Fuck off! He's rich!
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt him as... It doesn't... That is so vile. That is a vile thing. You know what? I did a video about shit Mike Ybarra was, like, spewing out of his moron mouth a few weeks ago, and I felt a bit bad. Even though he worked as an executive and therefore didn't, like, have feelings the way a human does. Part of me never likes singling someone out. I only do it to the executive class because, again, they're not really people. But I felt a little bit bad. I'm like, well, he's out of Blizzard and all of that, and he wasn't named as any of the shitty people. Maybe I'm a bit... Fuck off. It's clear that he does not think like an average normal person.
Yeah.
That his money poisoned like the fucking rest of them. For you to say something as offensive, and it is offensive, as it hurts him just as much as anyone else.
Yeah.
That is despicable. Sorry.
Yeah. No. That is the bit that got everyone. It's barely a fucking sentence into his ramble. I'll let him get weaseling a couple more words out. I can't speak for all the leadership there, but I do know him and I do know what he is likely going through. I'm not trying to defend the decisions. I think we all get ourselves into situations that are tough and unexpected. Certainly I have. It's part of the job, as is the accountability for the outcomes. I'll stop here. What accountability for outcomes? Phil Spencer sure didn't take accountability for all the people who lost their jobs.
No.
But he's a good human, and he cares deeply for the creative process and developers.
Sorry, I've got to stop you again. Human? No. The moment you're promoted to the executive class, you leave your humanity behind. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, Mike Ybarra.
Yeah, I'll leave it there. He really thought, like, hey, great time to go. You know who's the real victim in this? The man whose feelings were hurt after he took away a bunch of people's jobs. People said it was bad of him to take those jobs away. Think of him and his feelings.
It always gets me when they do this, because you see it with other, like, billionaires have feelings too. Like, you see where they try and humanize these people. And just the fact that they think it'll work, even after so many failed attempts, just speaks volumes as to how out of touch they are. Like, how dare you even pretend that your feelings are hurt when you're criticised, that you keep doing the thing you know doesn't wash with us again and again, to an insulting degree. How dare you pretend that we've hurt your feelings when you show none towards us? How fucking dare you?
Yeah, that sums it up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I will not be having any empathy for the feelings of Xbox executives today.
I'm going to have some feelings.
Good
I'm still going to have some feelings.
Yeah, very strong ones. Can you just imagine being someone who is laid off, having to read that?
Right.
How fucking dare you? I was trying to remember what it was Ybarra said last time that was so fucking stupid, and he's the one that wanted the tip system.
Oh, yes.
He's the one that thinks we should tip publishers, and they'll definitely go to the devs wink wink. Mike Ybarra, what a fucking tool.
Maybe the tips need to go to the executives, because their feelings have been really hurt, so, like, we should probably we should probably help.
Yeah.
The money will soften the blow of being told you were mean.
Tell you what, right? The workers could, like, hold off on 1 week of Pizza Friday that they got in lieu of a raise, and they can save that to buy him a little present. Fucking cunts.
Indeed. But there we go. We done it. We done did it.
We've done did it. We have indeed. Well, I know someone who doesn't engage in layoffs because they don't lay around at all because they're really busy, and their name is Laura K. Buzz. Kate Day or K. Buzz. I couldn't choose which one I wanted to go with. Can you tell us about the stuff you've done?
Yeah, the stuff I've done. Laura K. Buzz, you'll find all that stuff, what I've done on the internet, wherever you happen to find things. The same day as this goes up, there will be a new episode of Control-Alt-Access, so go check that out on YouTube. There will be an accessibility episode about Hades 2 and going into spoiler depth on my thoughts on that one thing that I vaguely talked around today. You can go check that out. That'll be up Friday. The big one, keep an eye open for, is the Accessibility Summer Showcase is weeks away. It is happening on Friday, June 7th at 4 p.m. UK, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. This year, I'm real proud of some of the stuff that's going on around that. I can suggest that maybe there'll be a place where you can find all the games from the showcase together in one convenient place to promote them this year that I'm quite excited about. There's gonna be a bunch of cool accessible video games. Tune in for that. What about you, Conrad? Where are you at on the internet?
Oh, you can find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Instagram and Blue Sky. You can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman, where I've been playing a lot of Hades 2 when I'm there. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda and Jimquisition merchandise at mercenarycreative.com. And everything that I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And you know who else has a Patreon? Stephanie Sterling.
I do, Jimquisition.com. No, that's... Well, thejimquisition.com is a website. You can go there if you want. There's a review of Slayers X and Crow Country on there, or there will be in a minute. Patreon.com/Jimquisition is the Patreon. You can support this, that, and the other. I do have wrestling dates lined up. Can't remember them right now, but there's stuff kicking off in June and July. So look forward to that. I'll have details on that next week. Thank you all so much. We will be back next week. So thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.